Hello everyone, my name is Jared Lautenschlager, and this is the Super Science Show. Thanks for stopping by today, and this is the first episode of my new channel. I guess first official episode. I did an intro video for the channel, but that one doesn't count. This one counts as the first one because this is where the lesson plans start, and this is where everything begins. So you can think of this first episode as the foundation for the whole series. So as that is the case, I thought I would take things sort of slow and we'll go over some basics. I thought that we would make this first one about the scientific method, what it's used for and how to use it, and then we'll talk about pseudoscience after we get through all that. But let's go ahead and talk about the scientific method first. So what is the scientific method? Well, it's a process for experimentation in which we make observations and try to answer questions that we have about our world and the universe. Now, the scientific method isn't always quite the same. Sometimes there are extra steps that people put in there, or ones that they kind of combine into one step instead of having multiple ones, but the core is pretty much always the same, is to make observations and try to come to logical conclusions based on experimental data and research and stuff that they do. So you can think of it as a series of steps, and like I mentioned, it's not always quite the same every single time, but most scientists adhere at least to parts of it that are exactly the same. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the steps, and I'll explain step by step how to do it, and let's go ahead and just take a look at it, shall we? All right, so this is the scientific method. As you can see, it is laid out in a series of steps. And your step one is going to be to ask a question. This question is something that you want to know about the world or the universe, right? Once you've got your question, then you're going to do some background research. Now, your background research is going to determine if, one, anybody's asked that question before, two, if they've asked a similar question, or if you're the first one to ask that question at all. And depending on which one you figure out, you're going to research things that are either similar to your question, or if you need to ask a new question if somebody's already answered that one, but you'll find out during your background research on stuff like that. Once you have done your research, then you're going to form a hypothesis. Now, your hypothesis is an educated guess. This is seeing if you're at least on the right track, and you're going to figure out one way or another if you are on the right track by testing that hypothesis with an experiment, which is step number 4. You're also going to see if your experiment is working. If it's not, you're going to have to troubleshoot any steps that you might be missing, or if you're doing something wrong, you're going to have to see if the experiment is working the way that it should. If it is working, or if it wasn't working, then you've got it to work, then you get to move on to step 5, which is where you are going to analyze your data and draw a conclusion. Now, as I mentioned, we don't start with our conclusions. That's why it's all the way down here. Sometimes people start with their conclusion, and that's entirely wrong. You never start here. You always start with a question. Conclusion only comes after you've done all these other steps, right? But you're not quite done yet. You have to see if the results are aligning with your hypothesis. If the results do not align with your hypothesis, you're going to have to come all the way back up here, and you're going to have to pretty much just start over. But your experimental data that you did with your test will become your background research. You'll ask a new question, form a new hypothesis, and test that one and do everything all over again. But that's part of the joy of science. Getting to do the little experiments and stuff, that's probably the best part. But once you get to step 5 and you've got your conclusion, if it does indeed align with your hypothesis, then you get to communicate your results. This is usually done in peer-reviewed journals and things like that. As a way to sort of share your findings with the scientific community. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Be sure to copy the list down, get you a piece of paper, write a note on a tablet or your smartphone. Do whatever you got to do. I don't care if you get like a chisel and like a block of concrete. I just love it when people take notes on things like this. This is an important way to sort of remember things. You can refer to it later if you are, just starting out to learn this stuff and you want to remember specific steps and everything. Then you can just come back and look at it any time, and that prevents you from having to watch the video again and fast forward it to the part where I talk about this or any of the other topics. So yeah, I encourage note-taking on everything. All right, so that is our scientific method. We're going to do something a little bit different this next little section. We're going to talk about some pseudoscience. Stick around, you don't want to miss it. Okay, so as I mentioned just a second ago, we're going to talk about some pseudoscience now. So pseudoscience basically is something that sounds scientific but isn't really. So these are things that are like homeopathy or, your astrological sign or something similar to that, perpetual motion machines. We have examples of all types of different areas of pseudoscience, but they're things that sound intelligent and they sound like they're legit, but they're really not. So, how do you protect yourself against misinformation? How do you tell if something is a pseudoscience or not? One very quick and easy way to tell if something is legit or not is to run it through the scientific method. So while you're doing experiments, if it's not holding up to scrutiny, then, well, guess it's not true. Now, certain things will have to be done in a very specific way with the scientific method. There are obviously things that you can't test. But for something like a perpetual motion machine, you can certainly test something like that. You can see, well, we'll talk about this subject. I don't know how many videos it's going to be, but we'll get eventually to thermodynamics. And if a perpetual motion machine is violating one of the laws of thermodynamics, then that is a clear indication that something's up, right? Now, this isn't to say that a perpetual motion machine is impossible, full stop. It's just improbable based on the laws of physics that we currently understand right now. Now, it might be that maybe somewhere in the distant future, someone's going to invent a machine that can run indefinitely, but as we understand physics, they're not possible. I mentioned homeopathy. The reason why we know homeopathy isn't true is because of something called the placebo effect, right? This is, the placebo effect is essentially like taking sugar pills and, or giving someone sugar pills and telling them that it's going to cure them of whatever illness they are experiencing. So they might come out of their illness for a completely different reason. Those pills did nothing, right? So they're used in place of things that would otherwise not help someone, and they think that they do. That is a placebo effect. And homeopathy is pretty much built on this premise of placebo, which is why we know it doesn't work, because we've run it through many tests and it does not stand up to the scientific method. So we're fairly certain about psychology at this point, to where we can accurately say that homeopathy is bogus. All right, the last example of pseudoscience that I wanted to touch on is astrology, which is the belief that the relative position of planets and stars in the night sky is somehow affecting your personality. Well, it's not. And the reason that we know this, number one, the stars that were in the night sky that were created when they were have changed positions. right? So that's not in the same part of the sky that they once were, which is why they kind of keep shifting it around a little bit. So nothing that you're observing was observed, thousands of years ago when these signs were first created. Also, there's a quick little experiment that you can do, and it's kind of fun. So what you'll want to do is you'll get a newspaper, go to the astrology section, take every single astrological sign, separate it from its description, and then mix and match all the descriptions, and then bring in somebody else from outside and have them pick their star sign and then read that description. And I can almost guarantee you that they are going to say that that one is them, right? That description matches them perfectly. The way that they're kind of written is very generic, and they'll kind of word things around differently to make it seem like it's a different sign, but they're all saying exactly the same thing, right? You can get they'll change words around, they might structure it a little bit differently, or they might do it backwards, but if you read them carefully, they're all very generic and there's nothing specific about them, and that's basically how we know that they're bogus. All right, that is going to do it for this first inaugural episode of the Super Science Show. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching it, and if you liked it, leave a like, you can comment down below and give your thoughts. What are some examples of pseudoscience that you've run into, or any questions that you might have? Also post those in the comments below. If you want to send me a personal question for something that you want to work out, you can send me an email that is going to be in the description. All relevant links will also be in the description box if you want to go check them out. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so, and ring that little bell icon too, so you are alerted to all of my future content. The next episode is going to be on the cell, and you're not going to want to miss that one. That's where things finally start to pick up. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys very soon.